Hello, Crop and Create friends. I am very excited to see you on a Monday afternoon. My name is Lori Craig, and you are here for OLO Hour. I hope that you have had a fantastic morning. There have been some great classes this morning, and I know that you have a lot to go, and I know that a lot of you are on day 3. So shout out for the heavy hitters. So exciting. I love Crop and Create because I love our community. I love the people that I work with in this community, and I love our crafters that join us for all of these classes. So thank you for being here. Hope you got a bite of lunch and are excited to go. Yes, Shaylin, I am back in my home studio. So on the meet and greet, my name is Lori Craig, and I'm the sales manager for OLO, the North American sales manager, and our office is in Eugene, Oregon. And usually twice a year, I go out to the office for a week. And so when I had done the meet and greet, probably 8, 9, 10 days ago, I'd actually been in Eugene, Oregon. So I was in a makeshift studio, but now I'm back home. I live full-time in Kansas. I'm a native Kansan. I've lived all over the country, but my husband and I have been back here for about 15 years, and we absolutely love the Midwest. So excited to be here. Yes, I have been a world traveler. I had a vacation in August that was in Europe, and then I've had several business trips since, and I leave again on Thursday for a trade show, and then off to another event. I woke up one night last week and it was the middle of the night, and I actually woke up, and it took me a minute to figure out where I was, and then I realized that I was home in my own bed because I have been gone a lot. So I am super excited to be here. Like I said, I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and I have 2 grown children, and just love paper crafting. I've been a paper crafter for about 25 years, actually a little bit longer than that, because I was doing it before my 25-year-old was born. I was scrapbooking and then moved to card making. And probably around 2007, if you don't know me or we haven't had a class together before, I started having a great interest in alcohol marker coloring, just because I thought it was such an eye-catching pop. The thing was I didn't feel like I was very artistic, and then I had the advantage of being surrounded by a lot of great card makers and a lot of really talented people, and they explained to me that art was a muscle memory just like anything else. And so that this was certainly something that I could learn, and it was a skill that took practice, but to not be intimidated, that alcohol markers were very forgiving. And so I kind of delved in, and a couple of years later started teaching alcohol marker coloring all around the country, and I've been doing that ever since. So I also do a little bit of design teamwork, and I do special events. So I have a Tailored Expressions event coming up next week in Des Moines, and then I'll be working on a Pink and Main, their Christmas event at the end of October. So just a lot of fun things. I've been working with Scrapbooking Cards Today for several years. OLO has been a partner with them for several years, really since inception of the product in 2002. And I have taught a Coloring 101 class with SCT. So if you do see that on the site and have any interest in taking that, that's really a kind of what I would consider a beginner's deep dive into alcohol markers. We talk a lot about the product information, what makes OLO different coloring techniques. We color several things together. So if you have fun today in our time together and you're looking for a little bit more, I would encourage you to check that out. Let Let me see. I think we have a couple of things that I want to cover. We're going to be together for probably a little bit over an hour today. So let's just kind of dive right in. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the comments. I do want to let you know that I have, at the end of our time together, I have some things to show you, some things that are coming to the OLO store. New product that we have, and we'll discuss what your offer is and some surprises around that. And I will try and look for questions as we go, or catch up questions. So yes, Trisha, I am looking forward to meeting you in person too. Please make sure that if you come to an in-person event and you see me, that you introduce yourself to me. I love that. I love getting to meet people who are just as crazy about paper and ink and color as I am. So let's see. Let me kind of switch to a different view. This is the packet that you should have ready for our time together. You received from us a printout page and a piece of black cardstock, and then you received an 8-color marker set. So shout out to Catherine and her team for bringing us an 8-color set this fall. We have had a lot of fun the last couple of years, and this was a great way for us to get a variety of colors into your hands and try some different techniques. So after we do our projects, I do have a progression of colors that you've received in other time periods from Scrapbooking Cards Today, and I will share that kind of a little bit later. So let's see. What you have is 8 marker colors, and I love this set. When we were talking, when Catherine and I were working on putting this together for you, back in the spring. I mean, it takes us a long time to get this pulled together, as most of you know. And I said I loved this set because it coordinated with a lot of things that you have already received from us, because I know that a lot of you just keep coming back and spending your weekends with us. So it was a great way for us to give you some additional colors that work with what you might already have. Yes, Catherine, I see that, your comment on budgeting. So it's always a little trick to make all the pieces fit together so that you guys get this most fabulous kit. So you have a miracle worker behind the calculator in the SCT office. So let's kind of take that apart and see what that looks like. So here I have my worksheet. Now I have cut mine down. I've actually printed it a couple of times for our class, but I've cut it down into quarters so that it's easier for me to show you on camera, because my camera doesn't give me a huge space there. But you have the black cardstock, which you can use to mat your images after they're colored and make cards. And I'll show you my finished cards at the end and kind of let you know what those measurements are. I had seen that there was a question about that. But let's take a look at this 8-color set, and we'll get this put together. So I'm going to roll all of my 8 markers out. And if you're new to our product, you'll see that they are short and squatty. And you think, oh my goodness, how am I going to hang on to that? And you are not expected to hang on to that. Let me see here. I have trouble getting the last one out, but there are my 8 marker colors. So OLO is unique in the fact that you have a full marker's worth of ink in what looks to be a half. And then first thing out of the box is you have some connector rings. So I'm just going to start putting these together, and I'm really not even going to pay attention to it as I work with you today. A little bit, let's see here. We've got a couple of blending pairs, which like BG 7.0 and BG 7.2 would be a blending pair. You'll hear that kind of talked about frequently in alcohol markers. A natural blending pair, just because they come from the same color family with the BG, and then the first number is a 7, meaning that they have the same hue or saturation. So I will put that one together on one ring. And then you have a third color in this kit that is also a natural blender to these, and that is this BG 7.6. And that one I'm just going to stick on a ring with the R 5.1. There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing I'm trying to teach you in putting these together. I'm just kind of getting them put together so that we can start coloring with them. So our tagline for OLO is your marker, your way. And as you build your collection, which you can keep track of, you got a swatch chart on within your set for 160 colors. But as you build your collection, you might learn a way that you like to have your markers organized. You might like to have, a very set and specific way that you put them together. We have color charts that help people that that let you identify what color is on what end, so it's easy for you to pull them out. But really, whatever works for you. So, there's my 8 colors on 4 markers that we're going to work with today. And then I have my worksheet. I'm just going to start with a swatch. I always like to swatch my colors because I think that it helps you see the true color on your cardstock. So those are some things. Cardstock can change the color of your ink, believe it or not. And I just did that backwards. I knew I was going to. Let's see here. So here I'm already a mistake out the door, and you gals, guys and gals, now you know if you make a mistake, you just keep right on going. But I like to fill these in just so I can have a visual on what they look like. You are working on the OLO Premium Marker blending card. And this is a 70-pound paper. It has a nice natural white look to it. And it is super smooth. It accepts color very well. I really like it because it holds the color tight. So what I mean by that is where I put the color on the paper, it stays. I have other papers that I work with that are beautiful for blending, but they might be a little bit softer and the ink will spread. So let me see. Crafty Cornerstone asks, when I fill it in, do I do just one swipe over it, or am I trying to build a gradient? You know what? I don't, Crafty Cornerstones. I just do one swipe over it. For this specific purpose, I'm just trying to get a look at the hue. I do know some people will build their swatch charts that way, and you certainly can if that's something that you are interested in. That's one thing about alcohol ink, is that you have a dye suspended in the alcohol solution, so you can build layers with just one color. You don't necessarily have to work with blending pairs all the time. So let's see. And that's one of the things that's great about this kit. You'll notice that you've got a blending pair here with these BG7s, but then everything else is kind of a one-off number. So here is this R5.1. Karen, are there refills available or fine tips to change out for detail work? There are refills available. It's called a refill cartridge. And you simply move your nib and your cap from your dry marker to the refill cartridge and you are done. And the fine nib, yes, we are working on a fine nib, and I hope to have that for you early next year. So, okay, so there's a look at how all of those colors look. We call this the muted kit, and you can see that the colors are desaturated, beautiful greens, violets, and blues that all look beautiful together. So I'm going to set that aside. And let's take out, and I think let's work with this image here first, the Hello Friend. And I loved these images because they have a really big, they're wide open spaces, one, that make it nice to color and easy to stay in the lines, but also because it does have thick line art. And so I like that because it lets you color right up to the line and it minimizes your accidents of going outside the lines. You can kind of always fix that with a 0, but if you are new to alcohol marker coloring, that's one thing that I would share with you is to look for line art that has a little bit thicker line weight. So, and if I Pink and Main has great line weight, Lawn Fawn images, TE images, but something that has just a little bit of distance there. So Cheryl, you can cut your panels down or you can work with the whole sheet. It's whatever works for you. This size, the quarter sheet works better on camera for me. And I'm going to show you how I made complete cards after the fact. So it's whatever you or do whatever works for you in your space. So, and let's get started. So we're not working with a lot of blending pairs here, right? We've got the BGs that work together, but then the other colors that we have are not necessarily in the same color family, okay? And so what I want to share with you first is a technique called the flick and feather technique. And the thing that I like about this technique is it lets you blend two different colors from different color families together in spaces like flower petals or big leaves. And you don't have to have the blending pair to make that look good. Or a lot of times when you look at flowers, you'll have a transition from the center of the flower out to the tips. One of my friends that I see when I'm in Oregon every year, she has an amazing garden. She grows dahlias. And so she has just this huge dahlia garden and it was beautiful. And one of the things that's just awesome about it is all of the vibrant color and how your flowers, they're different in the center out to the edges. And so I'm going to teach you how to do that today. So I'm going to start with two markers that end with the same last number. So I'm going to use, on this first thing that we color, I'm going to use O 7.1 and R 5.1. Okay, both of them have a 1 in the last position. And what that means is that the lightness of those colors, even though they're not in the same color family, they do not have the same starting number of saturation or hue, but the last number says that they're equally yoked from a color standpoint. They're both very light on the scale for that color run within the orange and within the red families. So the 1 is the last digit, and that's what I'm specifically looking for. This technique is called feather blending, and I am going to lace these two colors together on my cardstock. So you have a lot of wide open spaces here. And so because those spaces are really big, I'm going to be on the side of my brush when I take my marker to the paper. That will help me minimize the stroke lines that I have and make it a very smooth application of color. And so as I do this, I'm going to go over it just a couple of times, but I'm not going to oversaturate the paper. So I'm going to start with the O 7.1, and I'm just going to see how wide that stroke is. I'm going to brush that ink on the paper, and then I'm going to switch to the R 0.1, or excuse me, the R 5.1. And I'm going to flick from the outside edge back to the center. And then one more time, I'm going to come back to the O 7.1 and flick into that red. And what you will see is you get a nice blend of colors. Now these are pale, but you have a nice meld of color where the red and the orange kind of meet in the center, and you can't really see the transition of one to the other. So you'll also notice that as your ink dries, your lines will dissipate a little bit. So that's one thing that it took me a long time to come to terms with that sometimes I had to have just a little bit of patience and wait for that. It dries very quickly. Alcohol ink dries very quickly. But sometimes if I was still working on my blending and not giving it a chance to dry, I was coloring outside my lines. I was having ink that would, pack or splatter around just from having the patience to let it watch. So let's see, we're going to go around that again. So really wide stroke with the marker, starting with that O 7.1. And then I'm going to come back with the R 5.1, and I'm just going to flick in and meet where the O left off. Okay. So then you end up with a transition of color, this light orange color out to a pink on the tips. And I'm going to just go around the entire flower. Now, I personally like to work one petal at a time on flowers. If the image is really small, sometimes I'll do a little bit more, but I like to work one petal at a time so I can see what I'm doing. Question, I usually use paper beneath for some absorption. Is that not needed? Jennifer, yes, you can. And probably that would help with the glare too if I would put something underneath. It is a good idea to work with a piece of paper underneath, just because if you're doing heavy coloring and you bleed through your paper, you can sometimes shift it around on a non-porous surface. But so good catch there. And let's see. Do you know how bad I want to just color and keep smooshing? Well, resist that. Give it a chance to dry. So Carolyn, how do I clean the nib when blending different colors? You shouldn't have to clean your nib with this technique because you really are not going to pick up any of the different colors in it. We are going to use a different technique in a few minutes where you pick some ink up off of a piece of plastic or acetate or something, or another nib, and I will show you that you can just clean your nib off on the side of your paper. On a piece of scrap paper. Okay, when doing the flicking, are we using a light hand, and how far out should we be flicking? Yes, you're using a light hand, Dawn, and the amount, how far you flick is up to you. I usually go about halfway. Okay, so now here, these petals you can see are a little bit different because you're seeing a side view, this petal here at the bottom. So I'm going to have to kind of use a shorter stroke to get that colored in. Okay. And then this is also a side view petal. And this one, you're only seeing the very top. So, okay. Now, you could go back over this if you get it colored and you think, okay, I want it to be a little bit darker than that. You would just go right over the top of it. You can always work over the top of your alcohol coloring. Just keep in mind that the alcohol moisture, if you don't color like this full petal a second time, you will be able to see a difference or where you put your ink down. So I'll kind of show you. Okay. I can see where I've left off if I come back over the top of it. But it does deepen up the color just a little bit. And then I would kind of even these out. So if I've done, one, I'm probably going to work all three of these big petals now, just so that they all have the same color and finish to them. So I'm on the side of the brush, really light hand. One thing, if you are heavy-handed and if the light hand is hard for you, try backing up on your marker. So notice if I'm trying to get a really wide stroke, okay, but I'm holding the marker way back. I'm really kind of hanging on to it in the middle where that connector ring is. And that will let you get your hand at an angle where you can get that wide stroke of your marker. The higher up or the closer to the nib that I hold the marker, the harder it is for me to get that nice wide stroke. So Heather, how can you fix going outside the lines? Asking for a friend. Yes, I have that problem also, a lot. Let me grab a... Sorry, I had to grab this off my desk. But this would be an OLO 0, and this is just alcohol ink inside with no dye. And if you were to go outside the lines, you can just use a lot of companies will call it a blender. We don't call it a blender just because it really doesn't blend anything, but it will push your ink back inside the lines. So if you happen to go outside the lines, just work behind with a 0 and then let that dry. So you can see that it's still discolored here because my paper is wet. So I can't tell how much effort and how much correction has happened with my 0 until I let that paper dry. And so I've given it a little push. After it dries, if I still have color outside the lines, I will do it again. But you don't want to just keep your nib on the paper until you see the correction, because then you've probably went a little bit too far. Okay, how can you fix the okay, I answered that. What is the preferred paper for OLO? Polka dot paper. I like a couple of different papers, and I will show them to you at the end. I have a slide that talks about a couple of different paper types. Let's see, question, does the type of cardstock matter? Sandra, yes, the type of cardstock really is important. And there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can use a lot of different papers, but think of it this way. If you were watercoloring, you would probably use a specific watercolor paper. You would use a cotton paper that is made to absorb the water and let the dye move. Okay. Alcohol is the same way. I think any medium, you should look for a paper that you like and get the best results with. And then once you have found that, stick with it. And keep working. Sometimes I will hear people say, well, I'm going to practice with this and then I'm going to switch to this. But every time you change the paper type, you're changing how that ink is going to look and how it's going to react. So think of your art project as a tripod or a triangle. Think of it as a triangle, as in you have the artist, which is you. You have your color medium, which in this case we're using OLO, and then you have your canvas, which in this case is the OLO premium cardstock. Okay, this is 100-pound weight. If I change any of those three things, if I change the artist that's using the product, if I change the markers that I'm going to use, or if I change the canvas that I'm going to work on, I'm going to have a different result. Okay, so it's not about having one specific thing that works for everybody, but it's about finding what works for you and you being consistent on that. Let's see, does the 70-pound, I'm using a 100-pound cardstock. That's what we've sent you. And the thickness of the paper can have an impact on whether the ink spreads, because think about the ink saturating in between the fibers of the paper, and the thinner the cardstock is, the less room there is for it to absorb the dye particles. So these inks are built with dye particles. So if you're using a light color, you've got a really small dye particle. If you're using a deep dark red, you have a bigger dye particle, and you have to have some place for that to go. So if your paper is a little bit thicker, you'll be able to absorb it on the back without it spreading. But if you've got a thin paper, it's going to spread out a little bit more. Okay, let's see. I'm going to answer one more question, and that is on the printer. I always print on laser when I am doing alcohol ink. That seems to set tight for me, and I like that. So let's go back to this image, and we'll get some more questions for sure, but let's keep coloring because we only have about an hour together, and I know you guys have a lot. You want your breaks too. I'm going to do the same technique on the leaves that we just did on the petals, but I am going to use the BG 7.2 and the YG 8.3. Okay, so the last number is not the same, but it's very close. Remember I switched these up when I did my swatching. Okay, so the lightness of these colors is very complementary to each other. They look very close. If you would kind of squint or think of them on a grayscale, they're very close because I've got one ends in a 2 and one ends in a 3. So the tip for this technique is you want your markers to either match with like a 1, 1, or you want the numbers to be very, very close. 2, 3. Here you could use this 7, 0 and 0, 7, 1, but just keeping that last number the same or very close to each other. So here, let's work on the leaves. Same technique. So, okay. And I'm gonna, again, be on the toward the middle of my marker so that I can have a nice angle and get a nice flat color. This is BG 7.2. And then I'm going to take the YG 8.3 and I'm going to go to the outer edge of those leaves and flick back to the center. And then I'm going to come back to the blue and I'm going to go over that from the center of the leaf out to the middle, and I'm going to let that blue and that green join together and have a really nice little blend in the middle. They have a little party in the middle. Let's see, are these 8 colors new colors because they have the original bundle? And so, Shelley, no, these are not new colors. So these are from our original color palette or from 32 new colors that were introduced in 2024. Okay, so we do have some new colors coming, but I definitely did not have access with them to share them with you at this time. So I'm just going to keep working my way around these leaves. Okay. And notice I go back to the blue a second time, but I don't go back to the green in this case. It just seems like I get a really pretty meld without having to do the green more than once. So here I'm going to get my outside leaves. Okay. And that green is just a little bit heavier. The last digit on that is a 3, and the last digit on your blue is a 2. So that's, I think probably one of the reasons that I don't need to go over that green again to get a nice little blend there. But I just love that look. And I use this technique a lot. I like it on clothing. I like it on hair. I love it on flowers. It's a great way to expand and work with what you have, especially if you're just getting started and you haven't collected a lot of blending pairs. The leaf colors, again, are the YG 8.3 and the BG 7.2. Okay. Let's see, can we use a Copic 0 if we do not have the OLO? Yes, Copic calls it, yes, they do call, it is a 0, isn't it? And they call it a blender pen, but yes, you can use that. So BG 7.2 and a YG 8.3, and that gives you the basis of your flower. So you've got a base layer on there. So I'm going to put the cap back on my 8.3, my YG 8.3. And you'll notice that you do have your cap and color names on the side. So if you get confused as you are working, especially if you've got different colors on each end, that's very helpful. So people will ask me about the color names. And I'm very invested in those when we are making new colors, but then I never remember them. I always work from the number because I think of that number like kind of like the periodic table, right? The numbers help me understand so much about the color that I am using. So let's kind of build on this just a little bit, and let's build a little bit of depth on these leaves. Okay, so I have another blender to those Bs. I have the BG 7.2, the 7.0, and then you have the 7.6. Okay, so Kim, the letters are going to tell you what color family that is in. So these blue Gs stand for blue-green. The BV is blue-violet. The O is orange, and all of the earth tones are in the orange family or the yellow-red family. And then R is red, YG is yellow-green, and a V is violet. So it just kind of tells you where you're starting on the rainbow with that hue. So I'm going to help you bring some depth into these leaves and add just a little bit of depth in the shading of them. Okay, so I'm working on a glass mat. Grab whatever you have, a stamp package, a glass mat, a piece of acetate from a stamp set, an acrylic block, a Ziploc bag, maybe not Ziploc bag, but that'll work. It's just crinkly, from your lunch, and I'm going to use that BG 7.6, and I'm just going to scribble a little bit of ink onto my glass board. Okay. And then, so I have that BG 7.2, and then I'm going to come back with the BG 7. This is BG 7.6. Then I have the BG 7.2, and I'm going to work with that just a little bit so that I can build a little bit of depth into the corners of my flowers where I have started with the BG 7.2. And I'm just going to use the lighter as my paintbrush. So the BG 7.2 is my paintbrush in my hand. I have BG 7.6 on my glass board. Okay. Correct, Lisa. You are not going over the blue completely with the green on the first step. You have blue out to the center and you have green from the back out to the center, and you just let those meld and feather together in the center. Okay. So with the BG 7.2, I'm going to pick up a little bit of color off of the glass board, and then I'm going to rotate my paper. I don't try and manipulate my hand. Okay. I always try and turn my paper. I think it's much easier to control how you're applying the ink to your paper if you are always going the same direction. Of course, there's some, times when it's not quite necessary, but for the most part, I try and move my paper around. Okay. So what I have done is I have used the BG 7.2 as a paintbrush. I've picked up a little bit of the darker blue-green, and I have added that to my leaves. Okay. And then I'm going to just clean my nib off on a piece of scrap paper. And then I'm going to feather that over. And then you can see where you start to get a little bit of depth up in the corner of the leaves where they would meet the stem, and you'd have some natural shading. Okay. So the reason that I do this is because you've got BG 7.2 and BG 7.6. So there are several shade jumps between those two blues. By using this technique where you will use the lighter color marker as a paintbrush and pick up a little bit of darker marker, it lets you kind of bridge that gap. So instead of trying to make that blending happen on the paper where it might be difficult because you've got a wide range of light to dark there, that blending, now you're going to force that blending to happen on the nib of your marker. And you can just bring in a little bit of depth there. And the trick is then to just kind of clean off your nib whenever you are ready to go back to that original color. And then I can just feather right over the top of it. Okay. And what it will do is deepen up those corners. So I've got the BG 7.2 that I'm holding in my hand. I'm picking up BG 7.6, okay, off of the glass mat. And then I am just dropping a little bit of that darker color in. And then it will not damage your nib. I just bring my marker over to a piece of scrap paper and run some of that darker color off. And then it comes right back to the natural color of the nib. Question, when mixing on the nib, will it stain the paintbrush? No, it does not stain the paintbrush color. It will let it, as the ink flows through, it will push that dye out. And here it's, push, you can see where I've got like intense little pockets of the blue, the darker blue, where I've cleaned my nib off. Okay. So, and what this just lets me get a little bit of depth without necessarily having to have the whole series of colors to make that blend of that BG 7.2 all the way up to the 7.6. I don't need the 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. Okay. And then I have a little bit of depth there. Okay. And you can keep building on that because the color, the dye in the alcohol markers is translucent. So I can come back and I can go over that again. Just clean off my nib. And I can just keep building that depth. And you'll notice that as it dries, it will just blend right into what you already have on the paper there. Okay. Now you can also pick the ink up directly from your nib. If you don't have a piece of something to scrap, you could just use the light color nib and pick it up from the nib of the darker color. But I really like the palette technique where I scribble it onto a piece of non-porous surface, because then I can see exactly how much ink I'm picking up, and that is helpful to me. So, okay, so just dab a little bit of that lighter color in, clean my nib off. Okay, and there we've got our flower, and then you can see where your leaves are, even with minimal color range, starting to really get some depth in the center. And you can just kind of keep building that up as much as you like. And as you go around. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's pick out your other image that we're going to work on today and kind of do the same technique on the green leaves that we've got here. That was kind of your warm up with a big space, and now you have got a little bit smaller leaves. So let's start with the same color combination, which is the YG 8.3 and the BG 7.2. Okay, and then you're going to have this whole finished image that you can make cards when we hang up the phone together. When we get off the line, you'll have these images that we can put together. So I'm going to start down here with the bigger of the leaves. I think the bigger your area, the easier it is to do. So I always start with my bigger areas and then work my way to my smallest. So question, how long can you leave the caps off? Do you replace it after each use or each project? Linda, I just leave them off the whole time I'm working. It's not going to, it's not going to affect it. Pamela, you seem to get a splatter with the cap removal, a tip to avoid. I have had that happen every once in a while. When you are taking your caps off, one thing that you can do is just, like I usually will pop the lid off before I pull the whole lid. And then my other tip would be just to not work over your space. If you were stamping, if you were moving a lot of stamp pads around, you would not do that over your image. And I just try and work off the side, but I do know that can happen. And, I'm sorry about that. It can be a little frustrating, but I have kind of learned to just work off to my side there. So let's go ahead and give these leaves a color. Remember that now I don't have quite as much room to work, so I'm not quite as far back on the marker this time. I need a little bit smaller stroke just because I have a smaller surface area. Okay, so, but I want to use the side of my brush, and using that side of the brush will eliminate your streaks from the beginning. Okay, it'll help you reduce the amount of streaks that you have in your coloring. Let's see. Question. My leaves look a bit streaky. What did I do wrong? So I would work on the width of your stroke if your leaves are streaky. And I would try, that way you have less, the wider your stroke, the less passes that you have to do with the marker. The other thing is to work one leaf at a time, because what you want is, you need that moisture in the paper. That's what's letting your dye meld together. So here so I made it all the way across this leaf with 4 passes of the marker on the side. And then I'm going to come back from the back end. And then I'll do the blue again. So, okay, and then I'm going to let that dry. Even if I want that to completely dry, because until it's dry, it's still formulating and ruminating on the paper, right? So you just resist the urge to keep going over it right at one time. You can always come back and build the color, but I like to work in light layers that I let dry between. That way I can see exactly what I am working with, and I know exactly what I'm trying to smooth out. So here, this is 3 little passes. Now I'm going to have to get a little bit smaller on my nib because my flower petals are smaller, right? So, and just work my way around this flower. And you can see that I kind of am going back and forth. Sometimes I've started with the green, sometimes I've started with the blue. There's really you can't mess it up. Okay. Question. Do you put the lid on your surface so we can see your numbers? Yes, I can. Thank you for asking me that. Let's see. Okay. I am using the same leaf colors that we used on the first big leaves, the BG72 and the YG 8.3. Okay. I have to make sure I know which ones I have in my hand. Okay. And then I just flip back and forth. And even on these little ones, I tend to just work one leaf at a time. That way I can really kind of concentrate on what I'm doing, and the ink stays wet on each leaf. Okay. And try not to, just keep practicing. Remember that as you're taking all of these classes, your instructor, this is something that they've been doing for a long time, and all of us just want to give you the tools to practice in your day-to-day creating. So give yourself a little grace as you're kind of working through these. But it seems to be on these leaves, I'm making about 3 passes on when I get to these tiny leaves up at the top. Okay, this one's going to be 2 with the blue, and then I'm going to come back with the green, and then the blue. Okay. And then you can kind of go through that same process where you pick up some of the darker and bring in some different texture. These I'm going to do it just a little bit different on this set of leaves than what I did on the bigger leaves at the beginning. So I am, for right now, done with my YG 8.3. I'm going to set that marker down. I am still going to work with the BG 7.2, and I'm going to come back to, this is the BG 7.6. Okay, that I have scribbled on my glass mat. Okay, and instead of making it super smooth on these leaves, I'm going to give the base of the leaves a little bit of darker color with some texture. So because this is dry, now I can come back in and pick up a little bit of the darker color just here off of the mat. Okay, so pick up a little bit of the darker blue, and then I'm just going to gently drop some of that darker blue color in at the base of these leaves just a little bit of darker color. Okay. I am just dotting it on. I'm not using my brush to swipe that dark color on. I'm just dabbing a little bit of that darker color into just the base of the leaves, just to give it a little bit of texture. So I think one of the things about alcohol marker coloring is people love that smooth blending. But when you look at finished images that catch your eye in the gallery, on Instagram, in your Facebook groups, when you see the things that really catch your eye, a lot of times you have a combination of smooth color and then texture that is applied. Okay. Leanne, these images are some artwork that I purchased just for this class. So it's not a stamp set per se. Risa, can you combine different alcohol markers until? Yes, you absolutely can. So you can combine and work with, if you're collecting, if you have other brands, feel free to work with those, add those in and blend with them. Let's see. Linda, should you clean the nib right away before the darker color dries? You don't necessarily have to, Linda. I mean, you can just it's very forgiving, because as you use the marker and ink forces its way through the nib, it will clean that off for you. It's not really going to dry there permanently and stay. Okay, so now I'm picking up that darker BG and just adding a little bit of texture up at the base of the leaves. Okay, so I'm focusing really only on that BG 7.6, and I'm using my 7.2 as the paintbrush, and I'm just dabbing a little bit of color there. I'm not trying to blend it. I'm just letting myself see some texture. Just a couple little dots. Okay. And then what I will do is I've got a little bit of that BG 7.6 on all of those leaves. So I'm going to come back to my scrap paper. Now I'm going to kind of brush that 7.6 off of my nib. You can kind of see where I had a little bit of the darker color still up on my nib, and I just clean that off on my scrap paper. So now I have the BG 7.2 full strength, and then I'm just going to dot that over that blue area where I added the BG 7.6, but come out just a little past that. And that gives me a textured look across the base of the leaf. Okay. So hopefully what you're starting to see is how you can combine a lot of different techniques, even on one image within a project. Okay. You can do smooth blending, you can add texture. Let's see. Donna, can they say again why we're using the smear and not the brush to make the dots? Yes, because this color, this BG 7.6, if I took the BG 7.6 straight to my paper, here's the 7.2 that you're using for your main color, your blending color. Here's the 7.6 full strength straight from the brush. So this technique lets you use the darker color without getting a really deep, sharp contrast, and you're able to meld that in because you're using the lighter brush color to soften it up. Okay, let's see. Question, do I mix alcohol marker brands on my project? Yes. Oh, Angie's saying that yes, she does that. That's great, Angie. I appreciate that feedback. Jennifer Smith, this is the first time. Jennifer, that is awesome. I am so happy that you are loving it. And Wendy, that's great too. And you're feeling artistic. That is the whole point, right? Is to just give you some tools to practice so that you feel really, it's not even about how you feel about how your image looks. It's just about learning new things and relaxing in what you're doing. So, okay. And so now I'm just using that BG 7.2, and I'm just kind of going over where I left off with the darker color and bringing a little bit more texture out towards the center of the leaf. Okay. And you could fuss with it. You could just keep coloring it as long as you want. So will I go back to the darker pink? And yes, let's do that real quick. I am so thankful you guys keep me on my toes, okay? So this technique, remember we've used the lighter blue and the darker blue to get some texture and depth on these leaves. We're gonna do the same thing on the pink flower, but we are going to use our BV 4.5. And for our paintbrush, we are going to use the O 7.1. So here I have a BV 4.5. Okay, so there's BV 4.5. And then I'm going to use the O 7.1 as my paintbrush. And I'm going to add just a little bit of depth to the center of these flowers. So, oh, Michelle, oops, I have done that too. So where you've get your caps mixed up. Without buying all the markers, is there a suggestion on which order to buy? Debbie, that is just so personal, but I am going to spend just a minute and show you how to build on colors that you already own. And these techniques, you'll be able to expand these techniques, the simple blending, natural blending, and kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. So I'm using the O 7.1 as my paintbrush, the BV 4.5 as my darker color, and now I'm going to come in and just bring a little bit of depth into the center of this flower. Okay, so I'm not trying to recolor and make the whole flower petal purple. I'm just wanting to bring in some depth to the center. So I'm using my O 7.1 as a paintbrush. I'm picking up BV 4.5 off of the glass, and I'm just dabbing that in around the artwork. You know, you've already got dabbles of black in the artwork, so let that be your guide on how you kind of treat the texture of that petal. Okay, and okay. So hopefully in our short time, you've been able to see how you can use colors that you think, okay, these might not go together. You know, right when you pick them up, you open these up, and if you're at all familiar with alcohol marker coloring, you probably thought, well, okay, I've got a couple of blending markers here. What am I going to do with this? Okay, so, but that is kind of the whole goal today. Now, I have picked back up the BV 4.5, this darker purple, and I am going to drop in just some very small dots of that purple color around the black of the line art. Okay. And now I have got the center depth. I've got my flower petal that starts as this really faint orange and comes out to a pink. And let's see. Here's kind of how the finished card would look from your handout. And I did see a question about the handout for this class, and I am going to get, because I purchased this artwork just for you, so I will get a PDF shared in the files section of the class for this. And I want to show you a couple of ways to add on to colors. Okay, here's the other finished card. Okay, someone had asked me for the finished measurements and how I cut this. This one, my black panel is 475 by 3.5, and then I cut that white panel down at 4 5/8 and 3 3/8. I will share those measurements too when I get that put in. So we probably are going to be together for about another 10 minutes. So just to let you know, I have a couple of things I want to show you. If you have to take a break, I'll wind it down, I promise, by 40 minutes after to give you time to get set up for your next class. But I had a couple of things that I wanted to show you. Let me see here. Okay. Here is a transition of colors that you have received if you have done other Crop and Create events with us. This shows, and I did add this to the Facebook group, but this lets you see how we've added yellows. You've got some natural blending pairs through the years that coordinate with the muted set that you received today. So like last year, you received the R5.3 and the R5.5. Great natural blenders to the 5.1 that you got this year. The YG 8.5, natural blender to the YG 8.3 that we have used. And then you'll see in 2023, you received some beautiful yellow-orange colors, butterscotch and pudding, the 2.2 and the 2.3. Love those colors with the 2.7. I use them a lot. And also in 2023, you received a special gift from Picket Fence, which was a violet and then the OR 2.6. Okay, so a video of the marker in the third technique. Michelle, let me see what I can put together for you on that, okay? Because yes, we did. It's very hard to do 3 images in a short time, but let's see. Okay, this little graphic, I shared this in our meet and greet last week. If you want to take a screenshot, I also put the file in the Facebook group. But this has boxed in the OLO muted colors that you received for this particular event. And then it gives you some options to add to that to make natural blending partners of the colors you received today. Okay, so check your stash, because if you've done multiple events with us, you already have several of these colors. You have the YG85, I think, and the R5.3 and the R5.5. This lets you add on without, it gives you a sense of purpose in what you're purchasing. Complementary colors, if you wanted to bring some other color families into this, look at those YO23s, 25. The B4s are beautiful. They are a real denim blue. And then the other one that I threw in there is RG3, which is red, gray 3 and red, gray 5. I love those red grays, and they look beautiful. If you like this muted rainbow look, this desaturated colors, those red grays partner beautifully with the reds and the violets of this color run. Okay, so I want to show you someone had asked me about some sets that kind of coordinate and let you add some of those colors in. So some other 8-piece sets that we have that might be great complements to what you already own. The architecture set, it has got some beautiful BVs, some oranges, it's got a YG 2.3, which is pretty. Here's kind of some examples of how those look in comparison to the colors that we use today. So that's a great option to add on. Now remember, you can come back to this video because I'm going kind of fast here at the end. This set is called the 8-piece urban set. So it has some BG 7.3, which was an add-on that I recommended. You've got some beautiful ORs. G51 and 5.3 are beautiful greens. I use them very frequently. So just really beautiful color palette. Okay, let's see. And then if you like really bright and vibrant colors, this is a pink and Maine image or stamp set. Love these colors, and you can get a lot of this look with the Manga 1 set. You've got some really pretty highly saturated colors, pinks, purples, oranges. Okay, So one thing, our coupon code, I'm going to extend our coupon code to October 7th for you because we've got some fun stuff coming the October 1st, and we had originally cut that code off. And your coupon code is for a free pack of the OLO blending card paper that we worked on today. If you're one of the collectors, the collectors, we have 96 new colors coming toward the end of the year. We are currently doing a pre-order. That pre-order goes through tomorrow with a special discount. And so here's 96 new colors, and they do have a discount on them, and then you can use your coupon code to get the free paper. If you order other things, you might want to do it in 2 transactions because they will only ship then when that finishes up for you. The code is SCT2025. Okay. So yes, Misty, collector. I'm going to fist bump you there. Let me come back to my, okay. I think, wow, that was a lot. That was a lot to get through, but you guys had great questions, and super excited. I think we got through a lot today. I did see the question about how to refill, and it is, let me see. I think that's important for people to see exactly how that works. So let me look at my bag of tricks, and I think I have a refill here. See if I can pull it out. If I didn't. Uh-oh. Oh, I do. Okay. So if you need to refill, this is a refill cartridge. This is a full marker's worth of ink. This happens to be the 0. If you are refilling a brush, it will be a black barrel. If you're refilling a chisel, it would be a dark gray barrel. But when my marker is dry, so I have my 0 marker, when this is dry, all I'm going to do is take the refill cartridge. I'm going to pull the cap off. I'm going to move the nib to the refill cartridge. I'm going to move the cap to the refill cartridge, and I am done. Okay, so very easy to do refills. You only purchase what you need. There's no pouring, no dripping. Really easy and very affordable to do it that way. So thank you guys so much. I am seeing all of your comments, and so yes, Tammy, the big flower in the 3rd card. Okay, this is the same technique on the big flower, and the colors are R5.1 in the center, and then BG 7.0 on the outside. Okay, I will take a picture and I will label the colors that I used, and I will drop that into a thread for you guys. I'll combine all of the charts that I've shared and a photo of this with just maybe a simple, I'm not going to do a video, but I'll maybe do a quick tips and tricks to do this. Okay. So it is so great. I see so many people that I know in the comments. I want to thank you guys for joining. I hope you have a nice little break, and then we will see you again in just a few minutes. And for some of you, I will personally see you. Marsha, yes. The cardstock is available now. The new colors are available. We'll be shipping in December. Okay. So thank you to this team. If you see me at Stamp Joy next week, come up and say hi, and let's do a little crafting fist bump, and have a great afternoon. Thank you so much to Catherine and her team for having me. I always love getting to spend time with you guys. So have a great afternoon.